What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss muscle tightness. And I'm going to look into why you may be feeling tight all the time, whether it's after training, if it's at work, or if it's just in the evening when you're sitting back and you notice that everything is starting to get that bit tighter. And it could be your back or your hips, it could be your ankles or your shoulders, whatever it is. In general, there's certain issues that occur commonly, and I suppose if you get to the stem or if you get to the bottom of those, then a lot of the time you can fix this. Okay, the very first thing we have to look at is why you're always feeling tight in the first place. First off, we need to stop looking at it as a muscle issue. Okay, so instead of looking at it like at the hamstrings, or looking at it as your lower back, or let's say, I don't know, your rector spinae, or looking at your rotator cuff, before looking at those, we need to think why they would get tight in the first place. And as you know, muscles are dictated by the nervous system. Your central nervous system, your peripheral nervous system is going to decide what they do when they contract, when they relax. Okay? And you can get a sensation from your central nervous system. Obviously, we know you can get different sensations from it, but one of the feelings of tightness come from there because it's nearly a protective mechanism of, it doesn't want you to go into certain positions at certain times because it doesn't feel like you will come back out of that position if you do go in there in the first place. Okay, and that's a very broad view of what is causing it, but if you kind of get your head around that the nervous system decides whether it's going to let you into a position or not, then you'll have a better idea of, okay, right, how do I break this down and how do I tackle it? Now, there's other things that will affect that sensation of tightness, but in a general sense, as I said, it's more of a protective issue in a lot of situations. Now, why would it be protective of a certain area? Well, first off, let's say people who complain about their hamstrings being tight generally will notice an increase in that sensation of tightness after a running session, or after a sprint session, or after doing a lot of running when they haven't done a lot before. Now, obviously, you'll get it if you do RDLs, because that's fatigue-induced tightness. And the other one, I guess, with the sprinting and that is fatigue-induced tightness as well, and it's a lot of explosive movements. But that's your nervous system that has decided there and then that, okay, right, I've worked these a lot. To avoid me getting injured, I'm just going to get it to pull back a small bit. And it's pretty simple. Now, I'm speaking in very broad and general terms because there's a lot more to this, but I want to try break it down so that you have a good idea of, okay, right, my glutes are tight. What do I do? Why are they tight? Is there something that I'm missing out on, or is there something I'm doing too much of? So muscle tightness occurs only when the body is fatigued, if an area is weak, if the nervous system is protecting a certain joint or certain muscle. If it's not comfortable, maybe it could be due to inactivity, that you're not moving that much. And one that people don't understand or don't take into account as much is your mental state and how your mental state can affect that as well. So some of the main reasons that when I'm working with clients, I kind of start from the top and I break it down, and we go through each phase to see which one is contributing the most. If I have a GA player, football player who's complaining of calf tightness, and we look at their schedule and I find that they had a game on Sunday, they have a training Tuesday, they have a training Thursday, and then they have a training on like Saturday. Well, you could probably stem back or go back kind of a couple of days, figure out when it started. I'm just literally thinking off the top of my head right now because I was talking to a guy last week and his Achilles was kicking up, and it's because they had been training a good bit coming up to championship. We pulled back a small bit before it, and then they had a game and he played a lot longer in the game than he had expected. So he was only supposed to play maybe 30 or 40 minutes and he ended up playing the full 60 minutes. So that's a tolerance issue. And what's after happening there is the body is fatigued. So it's feeling like it wasn't able to tolerate that load. So instead, everything gets very tight, or you get that sensation of tightness. because it's like an awareness of the area. Your body now wants you to take care of that issue before just continuing to increase your load. And I guess a really simple way of looking at it is if you're first time back at the gym, and I know this because since like I'm back in Ireland now, for anyone who doesn't know, but let's say I got back last Wednesday. I only got my first gym session in this week, okay, and I'm feeling the effects of it. Now I didn't go crazy because I just went for a full body session instead, at like not too heavy or not too many sets or anything like that. But I'm still feeling the effects of it, and I'm still feeling tight in my upper back as a result of it. Now that's fatigue induced. Okay, it's not exactly a protective mechanism right there and then. Well, I suppose it is kind of a protective mechanism because it's saying if you keep loading, this is going to get worse. But that's fatigue induced tightness. Another example that you'd have is, and I always use the example of somebody who has dislocated their shoulder, you'll get it that they will have weakness induced. So they will lack range of motion. They won't be able to go into a certain position because their body will feel like they won't come out of it. It feels like the muscles around the area are not strong enough. And as a result, then it just doesn't let you into that position. So someone who has a dislocated shoulder, as I said, a lot of the time can't go behind their head, and they can't externally rotate because the body feels that if it goes into that position, it's probably going to get injured again because that was the position it was injured in before. So it just doesn't allow you there at all. Now, that could be weakness induced in that, let's say in your rehab program, you never address that issue. So there is certain muscles that could be weak around the area. Or it could be more of a protective mechanism in that your nervous system just doesn't have the confidence yet to allow you back into that position. Even though you have good strength and your mobility is okay, it's just not yet allowing you back there. And that's where the mental side comes into it, of anxiety coming into play about how you feel about your body. Do you feel your body's broken? Do you feel your body is that you've always been stiff, that you've always been tight, that your parents and brothers and sisters were all extremely tight and immobile before you? Because that has a huge effect. If you have that narrative that your hamstrings are always tight, or your calves always get tight before championship, or that your shoulder just has no mobility, or you've no overhead mobility, or your hips are really tight, is one I always hear. Even though people are able to move, often hear people use that analogy. Even though if you look at them on the pitch, if you look at them running, they move effortlessly and they move very well. So that's, you'd wonder, are their hips tight, or is it that they just have an idea that they're very tight and they're not moving that well? Now, obviously, when you isolate it, you can see it. So sometimes when you get them into certain positions, you'll notice it with like a 90-90. You might notice it with like an adductor rock. You'll see that there's certain restrictions going on there. But in general, having the idea that your body is really tight and immobile and can't move is going to play into how your body reacts. So your body will react accordingly. So we really need to take care of those beliefs. And some of them aren't as apparent to us. Some of them are kind of subconscious. They're really deep in that you don't notice them. And sometimes it just comes into the language you use and how you talk about your body. And they're harder to address in a lot of situations. And the only time you'll really notice that is when you're working with somebody else and they'll be able to highlight it to you. Or you could just become more aware of how you speak about your body in general. But I always find that with clients, if I talk through a couple of issues that they're having, and then there's certain things they may say that I'll pick up on, and I might not mention it to them straight away, let them go through, ask them a couple of questions, and a lot of the time people will come to the realization that they actually have been speaking very negatively about their body, or very negatively about themselves, or it could be a specific joint that keeps getting injured, I should say. So when you change that narrative, you'll notice that they'll start to get a lot more comfortable, and it works both ways, in that their body will start to get more comfortable with it because they'll start to speak more positively about it. But also, because they start to think and speak more positively about it, they'll start to use it that bit more. And that comes into the inactivity side of things, where the more you use it, the better you will get at using it. Okay, if you don't use it, you'll lose it, as the saying goes. But if you do use it, you can gain new range. You can improve your mobility, you can improve your strength. So a lot of the time it's about isolating it and then starting to isolate the issues that are contributing to it and then start working into them a small bit more. Now, other things that would contribute to it would be like if you have poor sleep, which is more related to the recovery side of things, that's going to have a huge effect on it and a huge effect on your body's tightness in general, because its protective mode will be it'll be on high alert. The dial will be turned up, and it will be because in general it's the simplest way to jack everything up in your body and put you into more of a fight or flight state, because it's a survival state. Lack of sleep only happens for certain reasons. It's obviously, in today's age, I guess it happens for loads of reasons, and a lot of them may not have anything to do with survival. A lot of them could be to do with just staying up on your phone, obviously too late, watching TV, stuff like that, having poor bedtime routines. But in the olden days, in years ago, generally your sleep would be fairly consistent, because you would go to bed 2 hours after the sun goes down and you'd get up 2 hours after the sun comes up. And now, with everything that goes on, that can obviously change. But if something affected your sleep back then, whether it be your stress that you're in danger, I guess generally a lot of the time it would be because you are in danger. And what your body has to do then, when it doesn't get its full recovery, it needs to prioritize what's the most important. And an interesting one, and to kind of change and go on a little tangent for a second, is that your body first, when you look at memory and you look at memory encoding, it first encodes the negative memories and negative stimuli, because that's more important to survival. So it'll encode if you, let's say, ate a berry that made you get sick, or if you stumbled upon a different tribe, or if you stumbled upon a pride of lions, it's going to remember that more than you sitting out and enjoying your day and walking around and, just having a chill day. The reason being is that it needs to prioritize survival. Okay, so to come back to it, when your sleep is lacking, there's so many effects of poor sleep. There's so many effects to the body. Oh my God. The body is really affected when you're not sleeping 7 to 8 hours per night, because there's so many processes in sleep involved in just regulation, regeneration, healing. Okay, so that's why it is so important. And what I was just talking about there with the memory encoding, that's actually, they're looking at how that may contribute to depression as well. Is that if your sleep is really poor and all you have is this negative remembering bias all of the time, well, that will feed into itself. So getting your sleep right is extremely important for your mental health and as well as your physical health. And if the nervous system's on high alert and you were training the last couple of days, all of those muscles are going to be much more fatigued because they're not recovering at night. And then you're obviously then start going to feel so much tighter, so much more restricted. And it's one that I'll often say to clients, is that they'll say, why does my levels of tightness change week to week? And it's really, really simple. You need to look at, like, how was your sleeping in the last week? What's your training volume like? Has anything been going on at work? Are you stressed out? Maybe you might notice it that on Monday you feel a lot more limber and loose and supple, and on Friday you're just rigid and tight. And sometimes it's actually the inverse of that. On Monday, because it's just getting back into the week, you feel so tight and you can't move, and on Friday then it's the end of the week and you're feeling more comfortable and you're ready for the weekend, so you just have this bundle of energy. So sleep has a huge effect. Anxiety, depression, poor general health, they all affect it. Okay, but I guess the main ones for athletes a lot of the time is, like, are you training too much? Are you not recovering enough in between sessions? Is there certain muscle groups that are taking a lot more load than other ones? So as I was looking at with the sprinting, the hamstrings. Another interesting one, and this actually happened to me and it has happened to a couple of other people that I work with as well, is that if you get a dead leg, you need to watch how that affects the opposite side. So if you get a dead quad, okay, because someone knees you in the quad, now you have to assess how that's going to affect your other leg, because you're going to be putting a lot more weight on the leg, on the opposite leg. So it might change to like a 60-40 or 70-30 percentage split between the legs. And if you're looking at the body is running on low fuel anyway, because you're already tired, fatigued and not recovered, and now you've actually added double the load to the opposite leg, or whatever, 30%, 20% more load to the opposite leg, that can really have an effect on it. And I always say that to people, is that you need to be careful with that. Same thing is like if you have tight calves and let's say you sprain an ankle, you need to be careful that you don't overload it by doing too much running too early, so that the opposite ankle or the opposite calf takes a hit. Okay, so there is other ones like that as well that you need to take into account. But I think one of the biggest contributors, especially in season 2, why you're always feeling tight, is people gymming too close to matches or too close to competition with runners. Gymming and doing heavy sessions the day before a match, or doing heavy sessions 2 days before a game or a competition is crazy. And a lot of the time all it's doing is taking it away, as opposed to adding to your performance. Now, it completely depends on the gym work that you're doing. So I would, what I said there, I would take that with a pinch of salt, in that if you're doing like power-based sessions, nice quick sessions, more for the kind of sharpness element of it, then perfect. That's not going to have a huge effect on you. But if you're doing high reps, hypertrophy style training, which some of you listening to this would say, who would even think about doing that? You would be surprised. I have a mate that is just gone to the gym, who I was just talking to, who has a game tomorrow, and I was asking him what he's doing, and it's all high reps, because that's what he knows, because he's kind of new to the gym and he's just getting into it, and that's what he's doing. So only that I said it to him, you could maybe change that around and do lower reps on this one, or work on this a small bit different. Then I was kind of explained it to him, okay, this is, if you do high reps, you're hitting the muscle itself a bit more. If you do lower reps, you're working more on strength. A higher weight, I should say, you're working more on strength and power, so it's more nervous system training. But it's not going to take as much out of you. And without me having said that to him, he probably would have went up and done a full hypertrophy session the day before a championship game. Okay, so and why? What was his reason for it? It's just because he likes it. He gets him in the mood. It kind of builds it up and makes him feel a bit better. Makes him feel like he has more energy and he sleeps better. They were his reasons. So I cannot argue with any of those reasons. All perfect reasons to get a light gym session in the day before. But that light gym session does not have to be hypertrophy based, 3x10, 3x12, like 3x10, 3x12 sets and reps and ranges, because all you're doing there is continuing to fatigue yourself, and you're putting yourself at risk tomorrow at the game, because you won't be able to perform and you're obviously at a higher risk of injury. But as I said there, one of the biggest things is you're not going to be able to perform to your level, because it's just not a level that your body will be able to hold or keep throughout the game. So that was an interesting one, and for me, I was like, geez, I thought everybody had this idea. I think when you're in it a lot, you kind of get the notion that people have an understanding of it, but you have to take into account that a lot of people are doing their best, but they just don't know the parameters, and they don't know how to change things slightly to be optimal. And with my own clients, I see it all the time, and I think everybody does it. You're meaning the best, but sometimes you could be doing more bad than good. Okay, so I guess to move on and to kind of finish up this episode, I want to talk about how you can work on it. And I think the first thing we need to look at is when it's a fatigue induced tightness or of sensation of tightness, we need to look at recovery. Recovery is key here, getting the body moving that bit more on a day-to-day, just to help it, I guess, to help with circulation, as well as focusing in on your sleep, your hydration and your diet. Making sure you're taking enough protein in is huge. And I know I do talk about it a lot, but in this situation it's going to be massive. If you don't get your recovery right, you're going to be tight all of the time, because you're always going to be fatigued and you're never really going to recover between games. So make sure you have recover between sessions. I'd also say assess your training schedule. So what are your gym and pitch or running sessions like? Are you gymming the day before a running session? Are you doing heavy gym before a running session, or heavy gym before a pitch session? If so, you need to, and if it's affecting you and you're feeling tight all the time, you need to change it. If you're doing it and you're feeling good and it's not having an effect on you, then no problem, that's grand. Don't change it at all. Keep doing what you do. But just maybe play around with it a small bit and see if you do 2 days before, how does that help? Okay, there is always space to change things around a bit. Now obviously when you're in season you don't want to change things too much, but in general you can always change things around just a little bit and see how that works for you. And in this situation, I like to give people a day or 2 days between their gym sessions and their pitch sessions, unless it's like a power prep session before a match. Now, what is your gym session like? In season, you're looking at more power-based stuff. Power-based is low reps and high weight. It's more to do with, as I said, like explosiveness. It's more to do with generating as much power as you can, and they're very short sessions, but you get a lot out of them. If you're doing really high reps, as I said before, that's hypertrophy. That's for muscle growth. And in season, you're looking for more of that fine tuning as opposed to trying to get as big as possible. As well as the fact that will fatigue you. So you'll be tired coming out of the session, and then you'll be tired going into your next session. And then as a result, you're more likely to injure or pull a muscle or do something like that. I guess the next one is, if it's an old injury, as I said, if it's like a protective thing, you need to improve range of motion and strength. You need to work into the areas that are giving you trouble, and you need to build strength there. And then you also need to work into them and push into them with the mobility a small bit as well. And if you do that, you'll get a better understanding of why your body is protecting it. So like, that's a huge one. Why is it protecting it? Is it a confidence issue that you haven't actually got in and out of that position enough? Is it a confidence issue that you've re-injured that area loads of times, so you just believe that you shouldn't go into that position? Is it a problem with the training program that you're on, that it's just not targeting it enough and it's just targeting different areas? We need to look at that, and we need to look at, are you being consistent with your rehab and your prehab when you are looking at an older injury or an injury at the minute? If it's due to inactivity where you're just not moving at all during the day, you need to ask yourself, are you using all of your body on a day-to-day? If you're sitting at a desk, are you getting up and moving around every 20 minutes to half an hour? It doesn't have to be that much. It could be just move around, touch your toes, swing out your legs, do a couple of rotations, take a couple of deep breaths, and relax. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. What do you do in your days off? Do you just sit on the couch all day? Or do you go out for a walk? Do you get out into nature? Do you maybe do a small bit of stretching or a small bit of mobility? Do you go for a swim? Do you change up the stimulus a slight bit? Because that's really good as well. It's a great thing to do. Other one is that, as I mentioned before, have you tried to get into that position consistently? Have you gone into the position, come out of it? Like if it's an overhead position that you're affected in, have you ever tried going into that overhead position consistently every day, 5 or 6 times a day? It doesn't have to be with weight, but just practicing and then figuring out where you're restricted when you are getting into that position. If you do that, that's a really simple way of improving it. The next thing, I suppose, is like, are you continually moving throughout the day? So I was talking about the 20 to 30 minutes, but it could be that you just need to change it up a small bit. So let's say if you are moving and you're a runner, but you're not doing much flexion, like spinal flexion, then maybe it's about going down, touching your toes, getting into like a downward dog position. Could be like a cobra position as well. Just changing it up. It could be a Cossack squat, a duck or rock, getting out into positions that you haven't been in a while. Doing that is a great way of improving it, and a great way of just keeping the body fresh and keeping the body supple. And I think the last one then is mental state. How do you think about your body? Do you feel that your body's broken, or that it's tight, or that you're training with the handbrake on? Do you feel like if you go into certain positions you're guaranteed to get injured? Do you feel like there's certain joints that are just bad in your body, or that you shouldn't do certain movements because you have a bad joint, or that somebody in your body had a bad joint before you, so you don't want to go anywhere near it, like a bad knee or a bad shoulder? Okay, they're huge. I can't stay. Jesus, what's the word for it? I really can't push it enough how important that is, how you think about your body. So I want you to become more aware of it after this podcast. How do you speak about your body to other people? When someone asks you, how are you doing? Do you say, oh, I'm bollocks, I'm fucked, I'm tight, I'm crippled, all these other words that are definitely negative and that your body does pick up on. As well as how do you think about your own movement? Do you feel like you're able to move freely? Do you feel like you're able to sidestep or cut? Do you feel like you have to bulldoze because you can't go around people? Do you feel like you can't stop fast or you can't accelerate quick? Because that does play into it as well, and that will affect how your body moves. So always thinking about it. I think McGregor was an interesting character for that, because the way he spoke about himself. Muhammad Ali was another great one. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That idea of just being really able to move around nice and calm and nice and relaxed, and then stinging like a bee, getting straight in and getting out. That's an interesting perspective, and it's exactly how he moved if you watch it. So I think that's a huge one. If you think about your own movement and how you can adapt that, how do you speak about it to other people? How do you speak about it to yourself? And then outside of that, then you're just looking at your sleep, your stress levels, your general health, taking care of all of those as well, because that's probably 70% of the problem, is that you're just probably fatigued and that you haven't recovered right, and that the fatigue comes from this poor sleep and high stress and all these other issues. Now, I've talked about that in loads of podcasts, how you can fix that, but it is so important. But that is everything I will leave you with today, guys and girls. I hope that helps out. I know a lot of people are in the midst of training now, so hopefully you'll get a better understanding of what's contributing to your own problems and your own issues. If you do have any questions, just reach out. Robbie at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, or you could just reach out to me on Instagram. Just say, hey Rob, really struggling with the shoulder issue, any ideas on what I could work on? And yeah, TikTok is the other one, so Mobility Tutor on TikTok also, and my website is just mobilitytutor.com. If anyone has any questions, just send them on to me. If you're having any issues and you need help with them, just send me a message and we can talk about what's the best option for you. But that is all from me today, guys and girls. I would love if you could actually reshare this on your story. It would really help, or even just share it with a friend who struggles with tightness. It helps massively to promote the podcast and kind of get this word out there to more people. And then obviously the more listeners I have, the better guests that I can get on. So if you can rate it and subscribe to it and add comments and that, it really helps with that. And I'd love to get on some bigger names in future. I do have a couple of people lined up, but in future get those names on so we can dig into them and see what their perspectives are on different things. But yeah guys, I hope everyone is doing well, and I will chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.